Hello, everyone, and I congratulate all of you for being here on a Sunday afternoon or morning, depending upon where you live. I'm in Phoenix, Arizona, and am delighted to be with you to talk about the application of ritual and ceremony, but more specifically, ritual as means of transformation in using two different formats. And one is in the indigenous culture, and I'll give you some specific examples of those. And then the other will be very specific to Freemasonry, which is not masonry, but Freemasonry is in which both men or women are welcome in the tradition. So that will be the focus of our talk today. And we'll start with a quote by Joseph Campbell, because these rituals take us through a process of change. We generally join into the ritual because we're expecting a change. But as Campbell says, change is never easy. But rituals are a structured way to navigate the unknown. And I love the specific quote: the cave you fear to enter holds the truth you seek. And a cave is such a good example because generally we go into darkness and then find light. Um, so you can keep that in mind as we move through the presentation. In particular, rituals provide a powerful process to help us with known or unknown situations, problems, or dilemmas. The purpose of rituals generally can include a number of things, which examples are to release emotions, to mourn endings, to celebrate beginnings, to reconnect with ourselves or others, to find our life purpose, our mission, to find solutions to problems, as I've already mentioned. And it could be to claim personal power, increase our power, our presence, that kind of purpose. Another example of a use of a ritual would be to open new ways to look at the past, the present, and the future. To use spiritual, psychological, physical, or emotional tools. And rituals help us to open to those tools and then know how to use them. And rituals can be the beginning of a journey, not necessarily a destination, but a part of a journey. So that's just a brief overview of rituals from the perspective of our talk today. Now, everything is energy, and a ritual is an energy process. And I wanted to be sure we all keep this idea in mind, because when we enter into a ritual, we enter into a field of energy. And that field can include everything from human energy, universal energy, any number of our fields of consciousness as humans: physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, soul level. And what we're generally seeking is some type of balance in our energy fields, because that balance helps keep us focused on our purpose and gives us the energy to move forward with more presence and power. So energy is all around us, it's in us, and it's within the ritual and rituals that we perform. there are many types of rituals. Lama Glenn I believe he's already spoken about some ritual types from a Buddhist perspective. Rituals can be individually focused, can be global rituals, can be community rituals. And you'll see examples of these, excuse me, in the Indigenous section as well as in the Freemasonic section. And here are some examples on the right. A ritual could be a potluck. It could be a seasonal ritual. It could be a fasting ritual, a cleansing ritual, could be a rite of passage. And in the Indigenous tradition, they can be vision quests and many different types of rituals. What we're generally doing in a ritual is accessing energy that is of a higher dimension than we are in. So that generally means sacred or divine energy, and we're seeking answers or directions for our life, for our situation. So who are we looking for answers? I let you put in the items under who. It could be a god or goddess. It could be an angel. It could be a deity. It could be something specific that you know of, that when you go there, you can access a certain energy. And how do we do it? Well, these are immense numbers of how we can access energy. We can use sound as an example. With either mantras, chants, drumming, bells, any type of sound can help us move through energy fields, break up energy blocks, and help us open to the divine access. Images also, in particular, sacred geometry images. They can be mandalas or yantras. I have some mandalas and yantras, Buddhist ones, in my home that I use for specific purposes. And also from the Indigenous perspective, certain images also. So there are many different types of hows that we can use when we're trying to access this energy and find answers. So as I mentioned, our focus today is to look at the Indigenous traditions and then the Freemasonic traditions. In the Indigenous traditions, there are hundreds and hundreds of them. So we'll look at what might be called some medicine ceremonies or some medicine rituals, because those are used to access the divine and can also, of course, access healing. And in Freemasonry, there are very specific rituals that are done. I won't be able to share the exact rituals with you, but I can give you an idea of how that idea of ritual is framed in Freemasonry. So in Indigenous medicine, generally what you're doing as a medicine practitioner is you're facilitating change in the person that has come to you for assistance, help, or answers. Oops. Oh, wait. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, heavens. What am I happening? Oh, here we go. So let's look, just to give you a frame of reference for what I mean by medicine people. Sometimes these people are called shaman. Sometimes they're called medicine women. They have different names in different traditions. I'm using the kind of English version of what the Native American people in the United States might call the medicine person. And in general, that's a shaman or sha woman. So the shaman's universal. They're all over the world, Asia, Africa, North and South America, Australia, almost anywhere in the world, you can find these spiritual people, the people that help others with energy issues to access solutions in another dimension of consciousness. Some of the records for medicine people say that they are 20 to 30,000 years old. And I'll give you a good book to read toward the end of this by Michael Harner, who I quote here over on the right. One important quote is at the top on the right of your screen by Mircea Eliade, who wrote a book on shamanism. She said, "It is the most ancient spiritual practice known to mankind." And Michael Harner, another researcher in the field, said, "Shamans represent the most widely spread methods of mind-body healing known to humanity." And another quote on a shaman is, "A shaman is a harmonizer, one who heals at many levels." Oops. Here's two pictures for you of a shaman. One, I say, is an ageless picture, a shaman who may exist today in the world, in another culture other than Native American. It could be Asia, could be South American. And then there's another image on the right of a contemporary shaman. So shaman have taken their training from other shaman of other maybe other traditions in the past that may not be practicing any longer, or who may still be practicing. And then they are access points for energy in the contemporary world. So I wanted to give you this picture because it might be a little surprising to you. You may be standing next to a shaman in the grocery line and not even know it, because the shaman is a person who walks the same way in the world as we do, to do the average work that we all have in life, but yet has another life, which is the life of healing and medicine. So what's the purpose of the medicine person? Generally, I believe it's to help and to heal. Sometimes a person comes for help, they don't realize that what they're needing is healing, but once the process is done with them, then they realize that the healing has helped them to bring themselves back into balance in the energy field. Excuse me. So in the medicine tradition, the shaman moves from one world to another and back again. So they move from the ordinary world to the non-ordinary world, and then bring information back from the non-ordinary world into the ordinary world. So they seek an answer in the non-ordinary world, or what we might call a non-ordinary state of consciousness, and then bring back that answer to solve the problem, heal the person in today's world. And they do that generally with a ritual. Now, that ritual will vary by the teacher and by the tradition of the teacher, the tribe of the teacher. And I've given you in a couple of pictures here of Peruvian shaman medicine people. On the left, you can see their dress. You can see a little bit of their altar and the work that they're doing in the altar. Some of the the experiences I've had with the Peruvian shaman are that there may be 5 or 6 or 7 of them around an altar, and they're all working together to bring a solution or a healing to the situation that has been presented to them. A medicine person can also work on a one-on-one basis, and the altar will be not as large as the 3 or 4 shaman people may have, but it'll be very specific to that particular medicine person. Certain articles will be there that are used by that medicine person, and that altar is then unveiled and then folded up at the end of the ritual. So as I mentioned, these tribes are all over the world. You see a picture on the right of Machu Picchu in Peru, and the worldwide traditions are really ageless as well as contemporary, and you can access the lineages that exist today. I won't speak about the lineages that existed in the past, although there may be some links to those too. So we've said that there's change that occurs. This energy field experiences a change in the indigenous medicine process. And what is that process? And this is a very, very brief look at that process. There's a person, an individual, I've called this person a seeker, who has a need for some change. Something has happened to them and they need assistance, they need ideas that will help them with this solution or the problem that they have, and they bring that to the medicine person. They have selected the medicine person specifically. Generally, they've done some type of research. They've had consultations with some friends or other people that they know of who have used a healer. So they select that particular healer. Now, that doesn't mean that that healer will accept that person, because the healer needs to understand very clearly what the seeker wants and needs. And the healer may decide that they are not quite the person for that particular seeker and will refer them to another medicine person or give them some other information that may help them instead of going through the process with that particular healer. So let's assume that the seeker has chosen a particular healer. What happens after that is a process that the healer uses that's focused on finding the answer to the person's problem. So here, the healer may have an altar that they unveil with certain objects on it that help them when they are moving into an altered state of consciousness. And then they experience themselves a singular energy process that gives them methods in which they can find solutions for the person. These are sometimes called altered states of consciousness, and they are experienced when the healer and the seeker are together generally. And then after the process that the medicine person goes through, that person debriefs at the end of the energy experience with the seeker and explains what needs to happen for the seeker to find the solution that they need. The solution may already be found if the seeker has gone through the energy process directly with the healer, and that sometimes happens. Sometimes it it is a separate process. The seeker may be sitting next to the healer, and the healer may go through the singular process, or it could be a joint process. It just depends on the healer and the type of training that they've had and their choice for the answer for that particular person. After that, the seeker still has support from the medicine person for the change to occur. The seeker can go one-on-one with the healer or the medicine person. The seeker will be given resources by the medicine person. It could be images, it could be sounds, it could be meditations, it could be rituals. Any number of things could be given to the seeker to help them effect the change in their life. And then the seeker continues at their own pace or with the medicine person. It is up to them at that particular point in time. So, what are some examples of medicine that can be used, medicine rituals, I'll say, that can be used in this tradition? I wish we were in a classroom so I could see you all, but I'm sure some of you have heard about a sun dance or a sweat lodge or a vision quest. These are specific examples of medicine rituals that are offered that help to affect change and healing in a particular situation. These all are examples of either a release, an awakening, a healing, a removal of an injury or damage to the soul. In particular, when the soul is involved, there might be what's called a soul retrieval done by the medicine person. The example also might be for death, rebirth, or renewal, or it could be for restoration. So there are numerous types of examples in the indigenous tradition that can be used for this change to occur, the healing or the balancing of the energy fields that exist. Now, in these examples, you may be able to see that some of them are specific to a person, and some of them are specific to a community. For instance, in the Sundance tradition, that involves one or more people who do the dance, but the dance is done for the community as a whole. In a sweat lodge, there usually are more than one person in the sweat lodge, but if it's one particular person that is seeking healing, that person will join the sweat lodge, and the sweat lodge will be focused on that one individual person. Although the sweat lodge could be done for a community or a group of people also. Now, the vision quest in the tradition that I come from, which is the Cherokee tradition of the Native American, North American group, the vision quest is an individual tradition in which a person goes on a journey alone, seemingly alone, although the medicine person is with them at all times in a larger energy field, and that person seeks a vision or a purpose for themselves. They're seeking healing in their life to find the reason for something. For instance, why are things happening to them as they are? And they seek the reason why it's happening and a vision for why it's happening. And that generally is done on an individual basis. In particular, I wanted to talk a little bit about the sweat lodge. I'm sure most of you have heard of a sweat lodge. I don't know how many of you have been in them, but the picture on the left is kind of a stylized version of what a sweat lodge looks like. The sweat lodge is generally a portable structure in which it is set up at a particular time for a particular purpose. If it's within a tribe, it may be a permanent structure. That what you're looking at in the picture is more of what I might call a permanent structure, because you can see the wood posts that are supporting the roof and the walls. And generally in a temporary structure, you see something that's much more like a tent than it would be the type of thing that you see in the structure. If you look at the top, the top of the structure, you notice there's some sticks, and those sticks represent a hole in the top of the structure in which the heat is released from the sweat lodge. Because inside the sweat lodge, there is a fire, a continual fire that's burned. And the significance here is that the person is returning to what might be called the sacred womb of earth. And that this is where they are cleansed or purified in body, mind, spirit. It would depend upon the purpose of the sweat lodge and the way the healer wants to handle it. And they're managed by a tribal leader. So you may have a medicine person, but you might also have a tribal leader that is managing the sweat lodge itself. The reason being, a fire has to be maintained. There has to be something outside of the sweat lodge so that if people need to come out of the heat for a while, that there's someone that will be tending to them. And the sweat lodge itself is oriented toward 4 directions. And this in particular is important for the native peoples. In fact, all over the world, the native peoples, north, south, east, west. Each of these directions contains certain powers, certain traditions, certain answers to problems. And it could be that one particular direction may be the solution for the individual coming into the sweat lodge for help. So the directions are used in the sweat lodge, and it could be all of them at the beginning, but then it may focus on one. It's kind of like the medicine wheel. If you've heard of a medicine wheel, again, the 4 directions where you walk the wheel, you find a direction, and sometimes one of the directions calls to you more than another. But in the lodge, the medicine person is directing the healing of the individual and may use whatever direction they find most efficient for the person. Now, you don't necessarily go in and out of the sweat lodge once. There are different rounds that can occur, and it would depend upon the length of time that the medicine person wants to use for the lodge. There may be a round specifically to purify. There may be a round for prayer and reflection, for renewal and healing, and then for celebration. And it's often that people need to exit the sweat lodge for a short period of time because the heat in the sweat lodge gets very, very high in temperature. And there often is a need for a break. And so people step out and then they may go back in between the rounds. Again, it depends upon the healer and what the seeker is seeking. So, what is medicine work from a person-to-person perspective? Now, the sweat lodge is person to person, but it's with another group of people around the healer and the seeker. In person-to-person medicine work, we have an individual who goes to the healer with a problem or a solution that's needed, an area of their life that's not working. It could be a marriage, it could be something with parents, it could be something at work, it could be that their prayers are not working, it could be any number of things. And those problems, as you see here, could be physical, emotional, mental, or spiritual. And what happens is the healer will connect with the seeker. And physically, they're generally either sitting across from each other or sitting next to each other. And what the contact that I'm speaking of is the healer and the seeker may have their hands together. One hand may be on top of the other hand. And this is generally what happens because the healer is taking the seeker on a journey in consciousness and will need to have physical contact with the individual to be sure that there's no loss of consciousness or loss of direction by the seeker. So the journey that occurs has one hand on top of another, and the healer takes the seeker on a journey into what's called non-ordinary consciousness. Now, often there's sound that helps this journey. Generally, it's drumming. That's how I've experienced it and what I use with my process, but other sounds may also be used. And a contact is made with spirit guides, spirit helpers. Now, these are guides and helpers of the medicine person. So if the medicine person needs assistance, they will contact these spirit guides and helpers who then help them find the solution, the wound that might exist for the seeker, how it happened, why it happened, when it happened, where it happened. All of these can give the healer the context to understand what the problem is and how to solve that. Then the seeker is brought back out of non-ordinary consciousness into everyday reality, and the seeker is engaged in the solution. And there may be techniques that are shared by the medicine person, some rituals that are given so that the seeker knows how to continue the process that will bring balance to their energy field and what I've been calling solutions to problems. So that's the one-on-one. And I mentioned a couple of the healing tools that are used. They can be sound, drumming in particular, images, herbs. Generally, there's a purging of the energy field that the healer and the seeker are working in, and usually in Native American tradition, at least the one I'm from, sage and sweetgrass is used before the process starts and then at the end of the process. Crystals may be used, certain images may be present, and those images may refer to the elements, air, water, fire, earth. Any number of tools can be brought into the altar and the process itself by the medicine person to facilitate the healing. So a shaman or a medicine person is a spiritual practitioner who engages with the spirit world performing various functions, including healing the sick, seeking hidden knowledge. We sometimes call that divination in the tradition that we're speaking of here in the Maurya tradition, and will guide individuals and communities depending upon what the situation is. So that's the definition of a shaman and a medicine person. Does anyone have any questions at this point in time? I can't see. I can't see anything on the screen if anyone's asking questions, so speak up if you do.
Jessica, if you could help here.
There
If
are
there,
no questions. There are
Okay.
no comments.
All right, good.
Diana, I just one comment about that, talking about the sweat lords and Finnish sauna. I'm just thinking their connection, because they are so similar. Like when I was a child, we call a smoke sauna the very oldest and traditional sauna, and it is like well, we have the wooden cottages or huts, how do you say, and there is the fireplace which has a huge amount of big pile of stones, and it is heated up about 8 hours. There are
Mhm.
no windows, and the smoke, when you have heated up, you throw the water on the stones, and it is called the smoke löyly. Löyly means this kind of when you throw the water on the stones, and then that bad smoke is coming out, and then you don't keep any more fire, and then people go there, but they are going there in silence. You are completely quiet there. That is the original way. And in Finnish people, we have the most O type of blood, which is what the native Indians have as well. And that there has been a question for several decades by scientists, that what is our connection to Native Americans and Native Indians, and just thinking about the sweat lords and this similarity in that would there be someone sometime far away ago who either came from there, or we went there, or how it came, but it's interesting, that connection.
Well, thank you for that beautiful example, because it helps us to understand the worldwide impact
Mm,
of this
mm.
tradition. And I'll just mention something quickly about
We also
connections.
have a couple questions, Diana, when you're
Oh,
ready
oh, all
in the
right.
chat.
Well, let's take those questions first.
Okay, so Ofor says, how do you know the true ones? True medicine, people like that.
Ah, well, that's a good question, and that takes not only research on the part of the seeker, and that may include talking to other people who have been through the process. Of course, you can use the internet to find healers also. You will you will also find a connection, almost a heart or a head connection for yourself. And I think that's what speaks to you most definitely when you're in search of the medicine person. And you can interview a medicine person also and see if the energy between the two of you is good. And that will help you also with selecting a medicine person.
Thank you, Diana. And Joe says, loving the presentation, inspiring reflection of shamanic awareness of many years. Diana, so great.
Thank you. Well, let me just mention something on the end here of Tulia's comment. When she said the connection between the sweat, maybe hypothetically between the sweat lodge that I've described, and then fireplace and the rocks and the process that happens in Finland. So are there these deep-rooted connections all over the world? Well, interestingly enough, the Hopi people of Arizona, one of the oldest tribes around, hosted some Peruvian Indians to come up and spend time with them and talk about their traditions. And they found very, very similar aspects of the traditions together. Even though they had never met each other before, there were similarities. So Tulia, I think there's like this net all over the world of all of these medicine people who are at work helping us all keep in balance at some point in time. So
I think so too. Yes.
Yeah. So let's talk quickly about Freemasonry now, which is a ritual process. Ritual is very present in Freemasonry. Freemasonry is a worldwide organization, and you'll see the symbol on the left, the square and the compass, and that is very representative of what Freemasonry is about. Two symbols there, that you meet on the square and you stay aligned with the compass. That's the idea behind the image. So it's a worldwide organization to promote equality of men and women of any ethnic and social origin to benefit social justice. In fact, some of the origination of Freemasonry came out of Annie Besant, who's a theosophist and occultist, who was concerned deeply about what was happening to the discrimination of women in a certain part of the world. And she initiated an aspect of Freemasonry in the area that she was living in. And it was a part of an organization that was founded in 1893 in France. And in America, it was initiated in the 1900s. So it has a social justice team, a service to humanity. It's not a religion, but members are faithful and devoted to their own beliefs. So any religion any person of any religion can become a Freemason and continue to practice their faith and not be influenced by Freemasonry other than in terms of its benefiting social justice and equality and freedom among all men and women. It is also at the very bottom here devoted to moral, intellectual, and spiritual development. So here we see the change issue coming through, that there is an improvement within the person in whatever dimension it might be through the Masonic process. So we'll have some examples of this in a minute. Now, there are a couple symbols that are tangible reflections of change that are used in Freemasonry. There's a square stone you can see on the right, and it looks nice and even. And then there's a stone on the left that is uneven. Well, the idea is you come into Freemasonry as an uneven stone, and you work on yourself so that you perfect yourself to become the perfect stone that can be used in building a temple to a greater consciousness. And these are symbols that are used, that are present at every meeting in Freemasonry. Now, the change process. You see a ladder on the right. This is one depiction of change. It's not necessarily the best, but I hoped it could give you an example of the process that a person goes through. In other words, they start at the bottom of the ladder, which is called the entered apprentice, and then they move up to the second degree, the fellow craft, and then the third degree, the master mason, and on up. And each of these degrees is an initiatory pathway in which their consciousness is expanded, refined, changed in some way. And the degrees provide a way to show others, but more importantly themselves, how they are improving their spiritual, mental, emotional, physical dimensions. And all of these on the ladder, as you go up, you give greater and greater service to humanity. So this series of degrees, in a way, reflects the change that happens through the ritual process in Freemasonry. At the very top of the ladder, you see, there shall ye find light. So again, the idea is you're climbing toward higher and higher dimensions of light and frequency as you move through the degree process in Freemasonry. So this is an example of some of the change that can occur. Now, there are also symbols that Masonry has, and the change that occurs with a person as they move through the degrees in the ladder are often reflected in the clothing that they wear. Now you see in the very middle of the page a plain white piece of cloth with some cords around it. That is the first apron that a person wears as a first degree person. And then as they progress through other degrees, the apron changes, has other images and emblems on it, and is an external reflection to other people of the internal change that has happened to the person. Now, these aprons are only worn within the lodge. They're not exposed to the public. So you won't see anyone wearing one unless you happen to be in lodge. Here's another example of the aprons and the clothing. On the right, you see a gentleman there with quite a few emblems on his apron. And then on the left, you see another example with other emblems and symbols, fringes, colors on the apron. And these are signifiers of the degree that the person holds within the Masonic organization. Now, there is one particular place in the Masonic organization in which all of this activity happens, with the ladder in particular, and the movement of a person in their elevation. And that is the lodge. The lodge is a physical location. It's a room. And Freemasons, unfortunately, don't have a lot of money, and they don't have many buildings where there's a permanent location for them. So they will often use a room or rent a location, and they bring all of their articles and objects with them in the lodge and set up the environment for the ritual to take place. And in that ritual, they follow prescribed rules, procedures. The purpose often is to study, to give an honor, to do service. And in the lodge, given the study and experience that they receive, as well as their focus of changing their degrees, that is where the ritual, kind of the rubber hits the road, where we begin to see the change occur with the person as a result of the experience in lodge, what they've studied what they have observed in other people. And there are specific rituals that are given for each degree. So the lodge is a focus of attention with a black and white carpet, 2 pillars that have special representation, and then you see the square and compass, and there are other things that we see in a lodge also that I wasn't able to put here on the screen. So what are some of the tools in masonry that are change tools? First of all, the visuals, the apron. We use certain tools that stonemasons use that represent the work on the rough ashlar to make it smooth ashlar or smooth stone. There are what are called initiations that move a person from one degree to another. And this is a physical process that a person goes through within lodge at different times in their life as a mason. Support is given. Lodge members are often assigned to elder members to support and educate them. Energy is a very, very, very important part of lodge. And the head of the lodge, the worshipful master, becomes very skillful at using energy to support a positive environment in the lodge for this change to occur. The time frame is controlled by the person who's going through the change. Opportunities are provided to them at different times, but they're the deciding factor in when they want this change to occur and how it happens, the initiation at a particular point in time. So this is how change occurs in Freemasonry. If you're interested in some links to Freemasonry, here are a few. Freemasonry for men and women, all one word, no uppercase. And then the international website is, it's called ledoixhumaine.international. And those are specific to Freemasonry. Now, you can go on the internet and find many links to Masonry, but this is the link that gets you into the organization that accepts both men and women. And that's the end of my babbling today, unless we have some other questions or comments, please.
We do, Diana. Let's see. Nesa asked, would some of our modern healing methods widely come under this shamanic umbrella?
It depend upon what methods you're speaking of, but I might say yes, but modern healing methods may not have the deeper spiritual dimensions that would come working with a medicine person. But they're in the same line of healing, yes.
Thank you. Santana says, from experiences of the sweat lodge and medicine wheel, the fact that the indigenous people see all the herbs and plants and rocks in the sweat lodge and in nature as living beings. For example, the rocks that heat the sweat lodge are known as stone persons, and someone is in charge of the sacred fire that heat the stones. The water thrown on the fire makes it even hotter, and the smoke takes the prayers and chants sounded in the sweat lodge up to the spirit world or heaven. Thank you so much for your talk. That really explained the shamanic healing process.
And thank you. I should have put some of those items in the presentation. That's excellent points that you're making, which fits in with Tulia's comments about the rocks. Thank you.
And Mariana says thank you. Many thank yous. Let's see. Helen asked, what does the G stand for in the Masonic symbol?
I'm going to let everybody take a guess at that. You notice where it's positioned, it's at the very top of that square and compass.
God?
Aha, yes. Sometimes called the divine architect, because with stonemasons, you're building a temple. So you need to build it in a certain way with certain architecture. But that's an excellent answer. And that is the answer.
Okay. And Freemasons laid the foundation for national unity in America and helped direct the course of the revolution.
Amen to that. There's an excellent book that's been written about Washington, D.C., and the way the roads were laid out and the way the monuments and the White House and Congress were positioned from an energetic standpoint. It's in my library. So if you want to know the name of that book, email me. But yes, indeed, our leaders, Jefferson, Washington, Adams, were all Masons, and it made a great impact in our country with their beliefs in meeting on the level and guided by the compass. That may be it.
Lovely. And then, Ofer is wondering, I am more interested in the Freemasonry, but please, are the students of Warrior Federation allowed to seek such collaboration? So that might be a question for Tuya. What do you think, Diane? Of course.
Well, from a Freemason standpoint, any person is available to be accepted in Freemasonry. You will, of course, read a brochure that with more information, but it's a non-dogmatic, non-religious, non-spiritually dogmatic group. So any person with any belief system can join the organization. There's an interview process that people go through also, but I'll let Tulia speak to the other part of the question.
Yeah, we don't have anything against that. Many of our students have been, and I mean that they still are masonries and masons, not masonries, masons. And then there is also one thing about the time factor, that one is then honest about that one is able to dedicate. When we are thinking about the studies, is about a certain period, but then being a Mason is a life-standing commitment. Or, of course, it is always up to the people, but in one sense of thinking, it is that when we commit to that kind of sacred work, we should be then standing.
And there are times that you can take a leave of absence from your membership, so that if you have other activities that must be accomplished, you can take a leave of absence. And I forgot to mention, but I will now if I can, that the occult and esoteric field in which Annie Besant and Charles Leadbeater were in, they both wrote books about Freemasonry and energy, and they are wonderful tools to explore. And some of you may know that Leadbeater was a clairvoyant, and he was able to see energies in a lodge and the movements of the energies between people and the worshipful master. how it was set up, and it just wonderful examples. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, and Ben brought in the number 7, and Walter said G is the 7th letter of the alphabet.
Mm. By the
And
way,
Maria said William Blake did a great painting of the Divine Builder. And Aurea says divine geometry. Okay, that's it.
I think, Diana, it was somehow convinced, or what is the word again, that what's the word which starts with C-O, not confronting, but when you make something that it is sure. What is that word?
Confidently. Confidently?
No, when confirming. I think that science was confirming that the note that the sun is sounding is G. And I think it's amazing because the somehow how they translate this radio activity or radio waves into music, like that there is a certain note for Earth and for Jupiter and those other planets when the Voyager was going passing them, but then also that I read somewhere that some scientists has confirmed that it is G that sun is sounding. Is that not interesting?
That's definitely worth exploring for my part. Thank you, Tulia.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Julia?
Yes.
In my family, there's a tradition of Masonry coming into conflict with Catholicism and an assertion of independence on the part of the family at that point. Thinking about the fact that the American Constitution and statements of revolution were based, put together by people who were Masons. I can see the vestiges of that coming down through the centuries. So that I find it both in the family as well as in the political scene. Basically, we can see that every time someone steps to a rostrum, there is some echo of what had occurred within the Masonic organizations.
Yeah, and when we think about this, what Tibetan says, there is the modern masonry, which is going to take one part is I think it is of storing the ancient landmarks. Then there comes the world religion under Christ, and then these how he is calling about these organizations under the third ray, so that was it about no, it wasn't education, it's something anyway. He talks about that, so that what is established in masonry is about that which is going to go towards the future as well. I think it is always about us that we should be working more unity and more synthesis than trying to find the differences, the way that we are building the separation. We should not build separation.